Hello and welcome to slot 3.5 Dreams, Nightmares, and the Surreal in horror games. This, I believe, is going to be a fantastic panel. We've got some fantastic guests. And I think actually we've got one of the most superb topics to talk about in horror. So I'm very excited to talk about this with our guests. But what we're going to do is we're going to start with introductions and hear who you are here to hear. Lots of hears. Gunilla, why don't you start us off, please?
Hello, I'm Gunilla Jonsson, and I work in role-playing games. I wrote together with my mate Mike, also in the panel, the role-playing game Cult in the early 90s, which is very dream and surrealist and sort of, well, very woozy game. And we also write for Call of Cthulhu, also a dreamy horror game. Actually, we've done quite a lot with Dreamland stuff there. That's me. Happy to be here.
Fantastic. Amazing.
And I
Yeah,
am
happy to have
Michael
you. Michael.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm Michael Petersén, the partner of Gunilla Jonsson. We have been writing role-playing games together since the 1980s. We started in 1982, 83, actually. Producing our first role-playing game in 1984. We did write Cult in 1990, as Gunilla said. And lately we've been working for Helmgast and the Free League. And we're also doing some stuff for Loso, the publishers Call of Cthulhu Sweden. And we also written 3 cult novels set in the cult universe, also published by the Free League. So I'm very happy to be here, and I hope that my sore throat doesn't cause too much trouble for anyone today.
Oh, well, I hope we don't cause too much trouble for your sore throat. That is some writing legacy there for you two. I think your first publication is as old as I am, which I guess is humbling in a very, very heavy way.
1984.
Jason, let's go to you. 1984, great year. Yeah, George Orwell, Terminator, T.A. Newman, and your first role-playing publication. What a brilliant year for mankind. Jason.
Hi, I'm Jason Fryer, writer, game designer, and general curmudgeon. I recently wrote for Cult Divinity Lost, including Beyond Darkness and Madness, the GM's Guide. I also write for Traveler, Through the Breach, Ninja Crusade, and several other games. And currently working on Metropolis and the Illusion for Cult Divinity Lost. And I also wrote for second edition Cult. That's how I got my start with back in 1995. So yes, I'm also old in in this genre. So thank you.
Amazing. And Tom.
Hey, I'm Tom. I'm a professional GM and translator. I translated this wonderful. You can't see it. I can see it. That's enough. I translate cult scenarios from time to time, from English to German. And I just started writing, actually, for Onyx Path Publishing. And I love working with dreams in my games. So I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, and it'd be amazing to see what we kind of come up with today, because I think the wealth of knowledge here is amazing. But lastly, and very much not leastly, we have Travis. Travis.
Hi, I'm Travis Vengroft. I'm the only one who's apparently not in a cult.
Yet. Growth mindset.
Yet. Or maybe in a different cult, perhaps. But I'm the producer, editor, sound designer of the White Vault podcast, the Dark Dice podcast. I'm also the DM of that one, or co-DM. And the writer for Unnatural Horrors, which is, we just kickstarted. It's been a bestseller on the Drive-Thru RPG, and it has a bunch of stuff for Nightmares, A Realm of Dreams, and Nightmares as well, and charts and charts of ideas to incorporate these things into your adventures. So I love nightmarish horrors. That's my life.
Amazing. I'm gonna just squeeze in a sneaky little fanboy moment here. Travis, over the last 3 weeks, I have been absolutely slamming through the White Vault. and I am fully in love with it. I think it's such an amazing production. I'm absolutely in love with it. I'm only just into the second season, but my drive to work, I'm kind of like looking at the clock, going, okay, 30 more minutes, and I can get some White Vault in.
I will tell Caitlin. She will be thrilled, the writer
Please
of our
do.
show. And
Yeah,
when you hear the human teeth, they're actual human teeth.
Oh my God. Okay. Yeah. But fantastic. One of the things that I lead into and try and special. By the way, I'm T.A. Newman, your host, and I am the host of the Miskatonic Playhouse, where we actually champion community writing, mainly for Call of Cthulhu. But I think it's fair to say these days a lot of that community content. It's semi-professional stuff. It's absolutely amazing work that's being put out there. A lot of writers then going on to do professional work. And I've got 3 best-selling scenarios and Drive Through RPG. I am also very lucky enough to take over from a fantastic human being called Heinrich, and I am the new chair for the Miskatonic Repository Convention. So it's a big new role. Really excited about. And when I'm not doing that, I'm a teacher of acting. I'm a voice actor. So very busy in this world, and it's lots of fun. But that's enough about me. Let's get back to talking about teeth grinding and dreams. Okay, so we are here to talk about dreams, nightmares, and the surreal in horror games. And I think everybody has just absolutely proven why they're in this conversation, why they're in the room for this. So I've got 5 questions. One of the things that I've talked to the panelists about is with the 5 questions, if there's anything that spirals from these questions, we're going to talk about it as well. If you in the chat have anything that you go, aha, this is something that we should this is something that really could pin this down, or is there a question here, or could someone clarify something? Please let us know. Please say in the chat, and we'll make a point of doing that as well. But we will kick off with our first question. So we're going to open this up, and feel free to jump in as and when you want. The first question is, why are dreams, nightmares, and the surreal a treasure trove for the horror tabletop role-playing game GM and players? Over to you, my wonderful panelists.
For me, I think it's oftentimes I can use it to get a window into somebody's head and let somebody's inner world spill out into the real world. The dreams and the real world shouldn't be totally separated, but they should interbreed and feed off each other, like Freddy Krueger in Nightmare on Elm Street. His dreams goes into the real world, and the people in the real world goes into his dreams. I think that's very useful in a role-playing setting.
I'll add to that. Role-playing is about interactivity between yourself and players.
Offsets the player.
Oh, sorry. I got a delay there.
No, please, Travis.
The interactivity with yourself as a GM, or your players and your GM if you're playing, it can give a lot of insight into a direction that may be fun to explore for a character. Especially if you've maybe had a session zero, you've talked about things that you don't want to go over, but maybe there's like some uncharted territory. Let's maybe go into the backstory of my character. How can I make it different? How can I expand in it? What are some elements that we hadn't discussed? Maybe they have a sibling that just never got brought up. And now this is an opportunity to create a sibling as, again, possibly the player or GM, or to create future conflict and give the DM or GM a roadmap of like potential interests for like curveballs to throw on a pre-existing campaign or ideas for a brand new one.
Well, for me, I've always thought that they allow you to introduce nightmare logic and the alteration of perceptions. So you can rely heavily on metaphor and symbolism and introduce those as plot elements rather than just saying it's a dream. I'm very Lynchian in my surrealism, where reality and this real blur, so that I can just draw in those plot elements and themes and have them appear without being awkward or nonsensical as they would be in like a normal setting.
And I also use dreams, and mostly dreams actually, as a way to communicate themes with the players. You can deepen the themes, you can deepen the story, you can bring up items that they have actually forgotten. You can always use dreams to tell, in your previous lives, you were all soldiers in the Great War and you died horribly at Verdun. So, yeah, dreams are a treasure trove, actually, yes.
And also, I think you can use dreams to mix the collective and the personal inner world in a fascinating way. Dreams can be shared, and it can be kind of a Jungian collective universe you make together, and you can narrow it down to a personal psychological landscape. So you have this fascinating psychological landscape to work with.
And if you use, for example, Call of Cthulhu, you always have dreamlands, which is just a great idea in every way. It's a place you can actually put your play characters in great danger and they will not actually die, which is strange for being Call of Cthulhu. And in Cult, we usually used our dream worlds and our dream princess, whatever did you call them in English? Drömfurstar in Swedish. The lords and ladies of the dreams, the dream countries in Cult, the first edition at least. So dreams are a way of cheating, actually, I think. The game master can cheat a bit and tell them things they did miss is in the waking game. And of course, nightmares is always good for scaring the shit out of people.
Yes.
There are so many things in there.
Yeah.
One of the very nice things I love to do with dreams is having shared dreams so that the player characters can have conversations they wouldn't bring up normally in another situation. Like, I don't want to tell you about my strangest fears or desires, but within my dream, they become open to the other players, and now we are in this conversation. Also, it opens conversations within one character. Like, you can have certain aspects of one character talk to each other, get into interaction, which I really like. And I also like the cheating part of it very much, because it also allows for the player characters explore something in their dreamscape, what they might or might not do later in the actual story, like testing how horrible could I be. It's another option that's there.
I would love.
Oh,
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, for cheating, I've had times where it's been like a total TPK. The party was killed, and I was like, and then you wake up by the campfire the previous morning. You're like, yes. And then will they go through the same encounter the same way? You can change things up, and that's
Okay, yeah, that's great features. Jason.
Oh, I was just going to say that I find it an excellent way of bringing pieces of the player's character's hidden psyche in and manifest it into reality. And that way it gives the player more agency as they try to unlock that different symbols and experiences that they're having through dream, nightmare, and just basically changing the world around them.
Can I ask a question about that? So are you talking about like puzzles? Are you symbolism, David Lynch? I'm following you, but can you just elaborate a bit more? I'm curious.
I usually use it for when there's somebody has like the disadvantaged repressed memories. So I'll take bits and pieces of the memory that the player doesn't actually know, and they won't realize that they're actually perceiving, their subconscious in reality, as different events start to play out, or different NPCs are encountered, are actually manifestations of their own psyche or their own dreams and memories.
So I think that's that. I mean, just going back to the question, I think what Jason is hitting on there, and what everybody's hit on, is that we're looking at Dreams, the Surreal Nightmares being a treasure trove for both GMs and players. I think we've talked a lot there about kind of what we can do as GMs, how we can use it, but I think that player side of it as well. I mean, everybody's playing, and when you play, you are playing your character, aren't you? And you are invested in your character. And if someone's focusing very much, and a few people have mentioned, Gunilla, you mentioned, I think Jason did as well, very much the psychology of the character, this idea of looking at different realistic psychological processes or analytical methods to look at psychology and use that to dig into the character. Because I don't think anybody who's playing a character is going to go, no, don't invest more time in my character. Don't explore my backstory. It's like,
and it gives them more agency and investment.
Yeah, absolutely. I know 100% when I've been playing in what's our long running one that we've been doing? I've been a player, which has been fantastic. Horror on the Orient Express, which obviously has those dreamland elements in it. It's been so rewarding having that big campaign with this dreamlike aspect to do that. I'm going to use that to take us to our next question, because typically I'm looking at the questions and going, these all super connect, and I want to make sure that we don't talk about that before we get to that. But I think it's just because it's such a rich topic, and it's like dreams could go anywhere. So our second question is, and we'll maybe move in the order that we did with our introduction. So Gunilla, if it's okay, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Michael, Jason, Tom, and Travis, and then a free-for-all at the end. Can you give an example of when you have written, GM'd, or played in a moment featuring, and I'd say successfully featuring, dreams, nightmares, or surreal? Actually, you might not be a successful moment. You might want to give us a warning. Gunilla.
Well, a recent scenario which Mike and me and our co-writer Gabby de Boer made for Lund. It's a source book for the city of Lund, the Swedish Arkham for the Swedish Call of Cthulhu game. And we have a story with students who make a theater play with pharaohs in an Egyptian setting. And the Haunter of the Dark, this is Call of Cthulhu, gets into it, and a lot of people die. And then we use dreams to put the characters in a pharaonic tomb setting where they meet the dead students who have been trashed by the Haunter of the Dark. But they also meet old pharaohs and possibly an incarnation of Nyarlathotep. And they get a lot of information, and they get scared to pieces at the same time instead of having to go to the library and find information. So that setting was in that story, it was a good way to convey information and a feeling and get them together to get to feel that we're in this together. We have a collective dream. Maybe what's happening out in our little student town is a big nightmare, actually, and the sense of real and dream got blurred. So I think that was very effective. Yeah.
And I think, a few people, we've already mentioned that idea of the collective dreams as well, and how that can help with the investigative nature of certain role-playing games as well. And then obviously you can hand that over to the players to go, what the hell just happened? Amazing. Michael. Oh, we can't hear you at the minute, Michael.
You can hear me now?
Perfect.
Yeah. I forgot to put the mic on again. Yeah, well, I have to go to the Lund source book as well, I think. We have another adventure in that one, the second adventure in the source book itself. It is a more of a surreal setting than a dream as such. It is a forgotten person, a person who's impossible to remember. You forgot him at the moment after he just left you, and the players are drawn into this, starting out as a rather usual, whatever happened here, or where is the missing papers, what's going on, who is this person that nobody seems to remember. And rather slowly and strangely things start to change around them. They get more surreal. Danish elements start to appear in the southern parts of Sweden. There's an old tradition about conflict about Sweden and with Sweden and Denmark. You probably never heard of it, but there's been a long conflict here about power, and the Danes actually occupied the southern parts of Sweden a long time ago. So it's a strange old story, but that's very much not what I was supposed to talk about. Things start to change around people. Things get more Danish. Suddenly the local restaurant is serving Danish specialties. Suddenly the cops are wearing Danish police uniforms. Why is the Danish flag above the courthouse? And they start to realize that something very strange had happened, something very surreal is going on. The southern part of Sweden is suddenly slowly turning into being Danish. I won't spoil all of this by explaining exactly what happened, but I think it was a great surreal moment for the player characters as they suddenly started to realize, what the hell is going on here? Why are these cops Danish? Why is everybody talking Danish? What's going on, actually? So, yeah, it's a great use of the surreal element, I think.
Without even playing the game, my player hat is on. And I'm going, wait a minute, is that this? Is that this? So that is a really lovely way to do it, isn't it? Seeping it in slowly. And I think that is something to be considered. I think with all role-playing elements, but with what we're talking about here, dreams, nightmares, surreal aspects, there's I think a lot of us as storytellers, as writers, the idea of seeping these things in, leading the clues in, letting the players pick up on it as they go. So it's not always, and I know it can be, especially with nightmares, a wham. You know, you turn the corner and Freddy Krueger's silhouette is in the alleyway. Is a scary instant thing, but letting those things creep up is fantastic. Really, lovely way to build that tension. Jason.
Well, I can say this, that I'm kind of proud of this one, more for the players than myself. But with Blood Dipped Wings, it was a actual play on TTRP Theater, or Lost Caravan. And what it was a surrealist horror driven by dream logic. It was a road trip into the PC's collective unconsciousness as guided by the god of the highway. And basically, in effect, they were on the American highway, the dream and nightmare of the American highway, of how people perceive it. So all the different ways that, we look at driving or escaping, going down that highway and experiencing things, all that surrealism started feeding in. So distances meant nothing, only the destinations. The places and the people that they encountered were more caricatures than characters, because again, it's how the players or the characters actually perceived where they were going, what they were experiencing, and all of their subconscious was bleeding into it and rewriting things. So it's literally started with them running over an angel in the highway. Refusing.
That's a roadkill to talk about.
Just keep going. Nobody saw.
And them trying to, for whatever reason, they went completely against what I was expecting, and they actually tried to save it rather than sacrifice it to the god of the highway. And the entire story just basically proceeded of them living through or living the consequences of that particular action. So, and it would just keep on bleeding in, different road stops. When they would come to a hotel, one of the doll persona, he would perceive his dreams of that seedy moment in that back room that was played out through a very small curtain in the window. But he refused it, which was kind of amusing because apparently his real mother phoned the player up and said, "Why didn't you go?" So I think we hit on a good note. So
yeah. When you, Jason, just on you say dream logic. It's something I do want to talk about at some point during this panel, during this slot. Is that your kind of like mindset of, well, this is what we're going to use as dream logic, as in, if I want to go from point A to point B, we don't need to do the journey, because in my dream I wouldn't do the journey, or are you talking about an actual mechanical feature there that's been written?
it was more narrative of how I would tell the story. No true mechanic, but the way I would look at it is, with dreams and nightmares, it's all about purpose and intent. You don't really have that string in between. So if they need to appear at a diner where they're going to try to feel safe, they'll find that diner, and then that diner will start to slowly corrupt itself as their psyches start to bleed in and change it. So, for example, one of the players, the god of the highway, is constantly talking through radios, and there was one of those old jukeboxes beside the table, and it told him, "I'm going to help you if you go out to that camper and stab the back tire." Doesn't tell him why. He says, "All right, I'm going out." He basically punctures the tire, and then 2 sessions later, they find that particular camper on the side of the road. The inhabitants have been slaughtered. And basically it was the god of the highway going, "Okay, you give me this, I will give you what you need."
Yeah, okay. I love that.
And so basically, intent, I think, is the key.
That's, purpose and intent. That's a really lovely way to frame that. And obviously, listening to you're speaking, and please tell me if I'm wrong, Jason, as well, that purpose and intent and dream logic, it's hung on what your setting and the god is there. God of the highway, that highway theme, atmosphere, vibe, everything, it all kind of drips off that. Yeah, amazing. Thank you, Jason. Tom.
Now I have to remind myself about the story I wanted to tell.
The trouble when you start listening to everybody else, isn't it? You kind of go, yeah. Sorry, go
Please
for it, Tom.
go on. So I'm running a lot of Changeling, and part of that is going into dreams and Changelings, the type of characters the players are going to play. They have a lot of leverage within dreams. They can change them. They can learn a lot from dreams. They can even harvest them for power. It's pretty amazing to be in a dream. And it's all good, jolly, and fun, unless the dream doesn't behave as they want it to be. So what I did in one session, or at the beginning of most of my games, pre-session 0, or after we have a rough idea of the character concepts, is I send them a list of questions to my list of players and ask them, well, there is something strange coming to your dreams from time to time. What's that? If you are in danger, what kind of feeling does this give to you? Where do you feel this, and stuff like this? So I have quite a few character-specific answers that I then later can use in dream scenes. And I had a few questions that were alluding to maybe some sort of dark secret. And within this dream, that wasn't by any of the player characters, but of an NPC, their own dream motives came bleeding in. And soon they became more worried. Where does this come from? Why is this happening? This shouldn't be happening. And is anybody seeing what I am seeing? And that was very fun. Also, since it's Changeling, I ask my players, what is your favorite fairy tale. And I picked one of these fairy tales as a blueprint for this dream of that dreamer, and then used the characters from the dream as parts of their psyche. So we could have the internal conflict of the dreamer represented by these fairy tale characters. And as soon as they didn't behave as the players knew that the fairy tale was going, it also created an uneasy, unsettling feeling. And I very much like more subtle horror, an uneasiness that just creeps into the players, having them slowly going more and more onto the edge. And this worked very well, I think.
Getting some very flashbacks of like Silent Hill 2 going on from these conversations now, and those kind of, the games that have so successfully over the years played with, and I think we're all leaning into it now, this idea of the psychology of the character, because obviously that is what creates a lot of the dreams and the nightmares that we're going to be playing with. Travis.
Okay, so I haven't done too much of the young stuff because I think collective dreams, that sounds awesome. I just haven't practiced that. I've focused more on isolated for individual players, and I use a sanity mechanic that my wife and I created, which is basically a stress system. So, will the stuff from your dreams kind of bleed into reality a bit more? Does the GM become more of an unreliable narrator as you see things in the dark? Are you shooting at a friend or foe when you thought you saw a monster? But a specific example, we had a character show up to Dark Dice, which is the podcast to make season 1, with basically like, I'm an Innskeep. I have a son. I'm searching for him. That's the quest. That's the backstory. So we took this, and over the course of the 3 or 4 game sessions, which was the very, very long recording days, we gave him a series of nightmares, and they got progressively darker. So it started off, routine stuff, and he was going through his day. Maybe he didn't have a son. That was like kind of one of the nightmares he had. Another one was, well, maybe he'd acquired some of his goods that he sells at his inn, because he also sells goods, discount. Maybe he gets them from graves. And then like the next step up was like, and he was really into it. He was okay with this. And then the next one we went to, okay, well, maybe he actually kills people that come into his inn, murders them, takes all the identifiers off, and sells them at discount. Okay, so now he's a murderous, and like he's gotten darker. And then like the line that he drew it was, does he actually have a son at all? Is he actually just taking these people out into the woods to kill them? And the party's looking for his son among other children that have gone missing. And he drew the line there. So we have this kind of quasi-sociopathic guy who actually does have a son that he loves, but we didn't realize who he was until pretty far into the campaign. Like he didn't know where he was going. And this isn't a spoiler because we answered this in session 1. We redid the intros so that you can get an idea of who he is getting into the story. But like most of the characters had a similar backstory where they weren't really sure how they were going to fit into the puzzle of the story. One of them might have really been the villain the entire time. And it's a lot of like, we kind of tried to leave it open till he wanted to make that decision. And until he made that decision, we didn't have to address it. And he could be actually the bad guy, or he could be one of, just some random person who has nightmares about being the bad guy. We don't know. So I try to use dreams as a means of exploring characters and also getting cannon fodder for things that I can use later. And again, siblings or other plot hooks that may develop into something interesting and fun for the table.
I think that's fantastic. I love this idea of, first, I'd be interested in your and your wife's sanity mechanic. That sounds amazing. I love that. Like isolated horror. Then we're going to kind of do this, but a little bit like Michael was saying. You're both looking at this idea of, or everybody slowly introducing these aspects of dream or nightmare-like horror that build up to the point where the character kind of they're forced to interact with it in some way, whether that interaction is I'm ignoring it because that's still a choice. It's still it's an absence of interaction, which arguably is an interaction. It's a choice, but you've got this idea of there's building up to it, building mood, building atmosphere, but you're allowing the player to invest a huge amount of what that is as well. And it sounds like from everybody on the table tonight that's a key feature, that everybody's letting the player invest almost as much as what the GM's investing to help build that narrative and present those things, which I want to be in all of your games, I think is the outcome of this. Yeah, absolutely superb, absolutely amazing.
Welcome to Sweden whenever you want.
Yeah, well, do you
Absolutely.
know what? Do you know what? I might just. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm always been a sucker for mood and atmosphere. It's something that I teach, and if I'm on the receiving end of, the GM, NPCs, the game itself, other players creating an atmosphere, and it's changing my mood, it's impacting that, I'm fully invested in that. And Travis, you talking about that player, the innkeeper there, and how you kind of introduced these things and you almost kind of gave opportunities for that player to decide when they wanted to cut that or address that, or I think that's a fantastic thing to do. Yeah, I'd be really interested to give something like that a try myself.
Buy-in is really important for because it really sucks if you're playing a character like, oh, by the way, you're a werewolf, and you're like, but I didn't want to be a werewolf.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think playing characters that then, and I think this is the journey that a lot of people want to do with their characters, and I'm sure that some people, and it's absolutely fine and really exciting because sometimes you want to play a scenario or a campaign. You kind of play to play the campaign or play the scenario. Most of the players I've been lucky enough to play with, kind of including myself, you want to play your character. You want to find out about your character. You want that character to go on a journey, whether they die because they're a squishy human or they go insane because they've got a fragile mind, whatever it is, you want that journey. And as long as that journey had an interesting, series of ups and downs, then I think it's really rewarding as a player. And, I think what we're talking about here can provide that really rewarding experience. You guys we've talked quite really inspiringly actually, and I am making every time I do one of these, I'm always making notes. David always reminds me to bring my notebook. When we're looking at this, so we've talked about examples, we've talked about the treasure trove that Dreams, Nightmares, and the Surreal can offer, but I want to talk about a process a little bit. So this is our third question of the day. What process do you use to manipulate the world of the game to present Dreams, Nightmares, and the Surreal? Now, we've talked about some of this already, so I'm happy for us to kind of go a bit more open on this rather than go around the table again. Anybody to jump in, or maybe Gunilla, if you wouldn't mind starting us off, and that gives us our launch pad into this. But it's that idea of drip feeding it in. Do you pull the rug out from under your players? We have hinted at some of this stuff. So maybe if you've talked about how you drip feed it in, have you done the opposite? What's happened? What are the kind of the do's and don'ts for you, Gunilla?
I think partly it depends on the game and the story. I mean, a game like Call of Cthulhu, you can use a surrealistic setting like we did in the story Michael mentioned, but oftentimes if you use Dreamlands is a place where you drop your player characters into. You don't slowly feed them usually into Dreamlands, I think.
Yeah.
So, and on the contrary, in Cult, dreams are as real as our reality because our reality isn't real. So in Cult, you can blur the borders between wake and dream, and it's all the same reality actually. So there you can go a lot more slowly, and you want the players to go along and understand that I am now perceiving a larger reality, and maybe I'm losing myself in the process, maybe I'm changing in the process, maybe this change means I can't stay in the small boxed reality that I thought was my only reality. So I think it's very game and story dependent how you use dreams and what you want to use them for. If they're information feeders, if they're the whole story, if they're something to tell something about the specific characters, the way many have used them. But I mean, it's a very versatile tool.
We also use dreams in our games specifically for Cult. We're writing on a huge campaign for Cult at the moment, and we have dreams as a part of this. We use dreams to, in a way, to make people realize things that they have forgotten, items from previous lives, things that they have forgotten because they were too horrible to remember. Dreams is a way to not really change reality, but to travel in time. You can always use them to go back to a previous life. You can go to a future life as well, because in Cult, time doesn't really exist. It's just part of the illusion. So, yeah, I think drip feed is always nice. Partly what happens when the illusion goes to smithereens in Cult is actually kind of like a dream or surreal things slowly seeping into what we perceive as reality. So for me at least, and I think for Gunilla as well, I really don't know, perhaps dreams and the falling apart of reality is part of the same thing. Dreams and the surreal are not really that different from illusion going to smithereens, because there are nephrites everywhere, and the city of Berlin is slowly opening up to metropolis. Things are changing and dreams are part of that. So yeah, I think I mostly use drip feed. I like that best, I think.
I think on the other side of this coin, there is Changeling the Lost Again. Someday I will stop talking about it, but
Don't. It's a wonderful game.
Yeah.
and
It's a great game.
At its core, at least second edition, is a game about regaining agency about your own story and experience. There is something that happened to all player characters, and it's something horrible. It's something life-changing, mind-changing, body-changing. It changes everything. And one of the big conflicts in the game is there are people, event, even parts of yourself who are telling you that it's either your fault that it happened or it never happened the way that you think it does. And so you're fighting for your own perspective and your own story of what happened to reconquer that part of you and to find a way to continue living. Jacqueline Brick said it's a game about healing in the end. And I really, really love this. And in Dreams, we have the possibility to talk about what happens or happened within metaphors. And our mind works in a way that it is covering up and muddling horrible experiences and memories. And dreams, on one hand, make it possible to talk about it in a way. And it also helps to basically manifest your own idea of what happened. And somewhere I lost my track of thought there.
Actually, Tom, just to pick up on something there, I think you just sparked something. I liked what you were saying there. Is there an element of, you were talking about like the mind trying to cover up and things? Is there an element where you could have a player almost kind of working against their own mind? Because I mean, obviously within the dreams projection, we're talking about presenting dreams, and some of the it's people's past lives or items they may have missed, or it's events, or it's foreshadowing, or it's this idea of connecting some dots that perhaps have been missed in a narrative, and we're able to present them through this other almost godlike power in a lot of respects, or maybe directly a godlike power in a lot of respects in these games as well. But you mentioned there this idea of the mind trying to recover or cover up things. Is that something that you've ever played with?
Yeah, there are two, I think, two main ways how this happens. For once, if you go into the realm between Arcadia, where the fairies live and keep you hostage and do terrible things to you, and the Iron World, where you originally lived, in this place between the hedge, you have left icons, parts of your memory that you can recover and learn about things that you have forgotten. So this is a way how you get something back that, yeah, you've lost. And the other thing, it's kind of hidden. It's the clarity mechanic. If you do something that, or if somebody questions you, or you do something that makes yourself questioning yourself. If I, as a storyteller, introduce a memory about something that was actually kind of good, actually there's something within you that wants to go back there, because maybe you have been cruelly tortured 80% of your time, but then there were these small peaks where you've been catered to, where you've been the most brilliant and beautiful and desired being in the world, because this godlike creature spends attention on you and just mentions that I would never harm you, just to beat you down the next second. But this one moment, this makes you question everything. And then you're going for a clarity roll to see, well,
okay, yeah.
Is this something that I let get to me? Or is this actually a destabilizing moment as the memory comes up if you dream about it? And yeah, that's...
Yeah. That's really interesting. Really, I really like hearing about that. I think, again, it's another great way to play and give that player an opportunity to roll clarity, see if there's something there, to give that opportunity to kind of play with whatever you've presented there, and the very unusual relationships you have with these ultimate kind of beings. Yeah, Travis.
I really liked what Tom was saying about the whole consent and buy-in stuff at the beginning. So when you have a table, a group of people coming together to tell a story, to play a game, essentially, there's a certain level of buy-in that everyone around has to like be okay with. So if we're all like, okay, this could be an adversarial table, but we're here to tell the best story and have the funnest time possible. Like we've done it a couple times at D&D in the Castle. Caitlin and I have run tables there. And these are people who have come, they're going to be here for 30 something hours to play a game with us, or 20 something hours. And we want to make sure that they have fun, because they're here to have fun. They've flown halfway across the world. And it's like, okay, are you all okay with potentially dying? Or, someone at the table backstabbing you, is that all right? Pushing you off an elevator, like, and if the answer is yes, then we're going to have a crazy time. And then when people are like, okay, my character's seeing stuff, everyone else is like, yeah, he's seeing stuff, this is great. Like, and it can be a really fun time. So our sanity mechanic is, as you gain stress and see stressful and traumatic things, your stress numbers go higher and higher and higher if you fail your rolls. It's like a statistic. And after you hit certain thresholds, we give you less reliable information that can cause real harm to your party.
Nice. Okay.
So as they're going through, example in our podcast is this one guy was traumatized by a shapeshifter. That's the entirety of our first season, is a shapeshifter. And then like he survives. He's like in the later season. And then we have like one of the nicest actors I've ever worked with, just a friendly guy, join his party as like this really helpful dude. And then out of nowhere, he's like, he says this phrase that implies that, yeah, he's the shapeshifter, you're about to get shanked. And then like, his element of trust with everyone after that moment is just shattered, because his best friend, his new best friend who helped him get out of the woods, was the shapeshifter that he's been afraid of. But because the people he was around who maybe did or didn't see it happen,
Yeah.
Was that real? Was that a real moment? Was that something that actually happened? Was the friend made up? Did they all actually see this guy? So you can ask questions and have the players kind of inform maybe the real answer if you need to address it. But they can also create their own truths, which can be really, from the pieces, the David Lynch stuff that you're passing out, But they have the interpretation, and their lens can be the truth, or not. But it can really, that can be a lot of fun to play with, and that's what my wife Caitlin and I love, creating these stories that people will just break themselves up over and think about a lot later, and like, oh, could we have gone? What would have happened? And those are fun.
When someone, Travis, when someone's playing, they've increased their stress because of a series of interactions, and then they're kind of rolling something. If their stress percentage is high or statistic is high, and you give them less reliable information, at this point, are they included that it's less reliable, or is it because they know how the stress mechanic works, they kind of go, oh, is that real? Because I saw Tom get very excited when you mentioned that.
It depends. Usually the player doesn't know, because like, okay, you see, like,
Amazing.
sometimes they're in it and they're like, oh yeah, okay, that's definitely not a monster that I'm shooting at. My character thinks it's a monster. Other times it's really not that clear. Like, someone walks up to you and whispers the phrase of like the enemy assassin group, and you're like, did I just hear? Like, you have to react to that information because threat is imminent. But when you react to that information, it was a shopkeeper wishing you a blessing, or like everyone else heard a blessing, and you just
Happy birthday.
You don't speak Draconic.
Yeah. Okay, Tom.
I love this so much. It's also part of clarity in a way. I think more in first edition than in second edition, changing the Lost. But the more harmed your clarity becomes, I tend to become more obscure in what I'm telling. It's more easy for me in German than in English, because I have to look up many words during describing stuff. But the worse your clarity gets, the more I will talk in metaphors. And you have to make up what's actually happening. And it also allows to bring in these dream elements that I asked for earlier. So they might get the idea there is a danger right now, because it is the symbol of danger that has been used here, but I don't fucking know what it is. And something that I also really like is to have dream sequences where one player character is within the dream caught, and at least another character is with them in the scene, and things turn hostile. And it's so amazing to see one character trying to fend off this demon in front of them, doing their best, protecting all their friends, but what they're actually doing is stabbing their best friend they're trying to protect right now. And depending on the tone of the game, you might have the third character in the scene who can try to draw them out of the dream trance or not. You have to find another solution. Yeah, I love these scenes.
If you have a rogue, describe the floor, and they'll just like, what? It's trapped. Like, their trauma will set in, and they will undermine themselves. That's all I wanted to add.
And I can see how this, obviously, and for those listening, are responsible GMs in any setting system. You're talking about consent, like Travis was saying about, is this idea of, are we okay with these things? But if your players are okay with that idea of, player versus player, then it doesn't have to literally be, as we've said, player versus player. This change, this surreal nature of, I'm attacking this thing, and then you realize it's one of the other players, is such a fantastic way. And let's face it, if you were a villain and you could do that, you would, wouldn't you? You'd get them to do the dirty work for you. So, it's an energy saving technique for all our villains out there. Amazing. Just before we move on to our fourth question, are there any other processes?
Do you mind if I add?
No, please. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was going to say that I do both. I like to drip feed it and also to pull the rug out from the players. I believe that the expression is to defy your players' expectations. I prefer to defile my players' expectations. So that by the end of a session, I want to make sure that the players themselves don't know if they're experiencing a dream or if they're experiencing reality. So I like to play the dream logic and just stretch it out throughout a scenario. And then because the one thing that I've always found in a lot of literature and movies is that when there's a dream, you know it's a dream. It's trying to throw some narrative at you. And when you're experiencing that, it kind of, I think it kind of undermines the horror. But if you can introduce very subtle hints and basically just trying to draw the players in slowly, and then they realize, oh, wait a minute, am I awake? Am I asleep? Is this real in front of me? Have I actually taken this action? For example, with blood dripped wings, one of the players, she refused to open up doors because she sometimes when she would open it, it'd be the dream, and other times it would just be normal. And that expectation just basically, I kept on playing on it and tweaking it. So because she would always meet whatever was on the other side, which is usually the thing that she didn't want to see.
You obviously a very Hollywoodized film, but done incredibly well. I just had a flash of that moment at the end of Inception with the spinning top, and it's the is this a dream? Is this not a dream? And I think that is in that if you can encapsulate a feeling or an atmosphere along those lines for your players, then that's quite a wonderful thing for them to think on, to ponder, whether you answer it or not. And I think a lot of us are erring on the side of you don't have to answer a lot of these things because it becomes a part of the players, or the character, should we say, perception of the world, the surreal that they're in. Yeah, brilliant, Jason. Thank you. I really like that. To defy or defile, or you prefer to defile rather than defy.
I prefer defile. Yeah, and I would suggest that anybody who wants to try to do surreal horror, watch the cafeteria scene in Mulholland Drive, where just basically it stretches out like a razor, and then it hits at the end. But just that whole surreal kind of dreamlike nature to it, and then finally, it's when that shock hits. That's kind of like when you would startle awake.
All hail to David Lynch.
Oh, and I think someone earlier actually used Lynch as like a descriptive, active, very Lynchian. Which are all appropriate words in this panel. Can I just going slightly rogue for a minute? Just thinking about our GMs out there who are going to be hopefully running a scenario, really leaning into nightmares, dreams, and surreal, and also players that are listening that were kind of going, okay, I love the sound of this. I'd love to be in a scenario or a campaign where I get to do this. In terms of, let's say, and I suppose this is a bit of a setup, so apologies. But let's say you're in a scenario or a campaign where the characters go in and out of surreal and or nightmares and dreams, so that they do get these psychological breaks from the dream, whether they know it or not, whether it's drip fed in or not. Do you, and I'll throw this open to everybody, do you play with the impact on the character, whether that's psychological or physical, from one world to the next, or the blurring of worlds? I'm thinking of, firstly, my first thought was that kind of like the mental psychological trauma that a character might then carry through for the rest of the story. How would you present that, or how would you play with that, or how would you like to play with that?
I pick on people, but it's fun and they're okay with it. And they enjoy it too, because they pick on their own characters. We have this one character who's obsessed with, they're a shapeshifter, because that's what they do. They can shapeshift into a creature that's a carnivore. And over the course of the adventure, they've bitten a few things and discovered they liked the taste. And those are humanoids. So, when you've consumed elf meat and you're an elf, or you're a halfling, or you're a human, but you ate it when you were maybe like something else, that's okay. But now you're starting to like crave this. So like as they're going and having these mundane interactivities at a diner, or eating with their friends, or talking about like, oh, let's have a break and eat trail rations. Are they meat? Like you get into these weird like, oh, the flavor isn't that good. And you can kind of, it doesn't inform the situation. You just give them the ammo, and they can, if they're really into it, they'll run with it and set ablaze to everything in a 10-mile perimeter or kilometer perimeter. But I really like picking on people in fun ways that they also can pick on their own character in those sorts of ways and psychologically bring it with them, or say like maybe they're over it and maybe now they're only going to they will never eat meat again, and now they're vegetarian or something, or pescatarian or whatever, and move on with it. But that has allowed a lot of fun interactivities. I tend to bring the mirror to fight Medusas at the players and let them be their own worst enemies, and that's been effective for me and my partner.
That's nice, especially when you have a player that if you put something down like that, they pick it up, and whichever direction they go with it, yeah, they're doing something with it because obviously you're offering it with that sense of, hey, that was tasty.
And if they do go vegetarian and like some blood kind of gets near their lip on a fight,
right?
Like, oh no,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. What happens? Yeah, exactly. No, I think that's a really lovely point. Especially, we've talked about that buy-in, that kind of, if the players are happy with their characters getting involved in these things, then that's a really nice way to go. Anybody else? Is there any kind of wear and tear that you like playing with your characters with this after these dream, nightmare, surreal moments?
Well, my characters, I've had players constantly say, torture us. So I take that as a compliment. And I'd like to have physical manifestations after a nightmare or a dream. One character, she fell asleep in a bathtub and was dreaming of one of her memories of when she was attacked by crocodiles. So she thought that she was waking up as, she realized that the tub was filled with river water, and then just sank down into the tub and she could feel biting. So when she finally came out, of the river beside the house, she was covered with bite marks and, scratches. So that dream kind of manifested, and she took the wounds and basically carried those wounds for the rest of the scenario. So they were constantly bleeding and oozing.
So that's powerful, yeah. That's fantastic. Yeah, the realization that the dream is just as dangerous, if not 100 times more dangerous than the real world. That's a very kind of Freddy Krueger vibe, but without Freddy Krueger. Freddy Crocodile. That's really exciting, isn't it? Because you kind of go, okay, my character needs to sleep at some point.
And in many ways, that's connection,
the danger.
And she wanted those wounds because in some ways it grounded her back to that memory and those lost memories.
Yeah,
because she knew something had happened back then, and now she's got proof of it. So she was constantly scratching and reopening the wounds just so that they would be there.
Okay, but there's also a moment of there's a validity in that, isn't there? If you're talking to the other characters, it's like, look, this actually happened. This wasn't just up here. It was here. Yeah, that's really cool. I love that, Jason. Gunilla, Michael, Tom, how would you post surreal dream torture?
You want to have the connection, of course, between the dream and the wake. I think Mike and me, we wrote a Call of Cthulhu scenario, the Kingshaven Minotaur, where one character turns into a deep one during the campaign. And we also have the deep one's dreamlands, where the characters they are experience some things in the deep one's dreamlands, and this character turning into a deep one experiences things that is for her quite positive, for the others not so much in the dreamlands. And then when they wake up, this becomes an urge for her to further her change, while the others have to handle their reactions to what they've been through in the dreamlands and what is happening to her. And I think that dynamic worked out quite well.
We also used something very much like it in another Call of Cthulhu scenario we wrote together with Gabriel de Boer, the yellow film, the yellow movie, which is, guess what, about our good girlfriend dressed all in yellow. But in this case, we had people disappearing from from a film scene in Stockholm in 1926 or 27. And we did use the court of Hastur as a part of the story, but we also had a theater on the edge of reality, on the edge of dream, on the edge of the court of Hastur, where things were very, very dreamlike and very, very much like German expressionism. All the floor and the walls and the roof didn't really match up. You had very strange lighting. Things were in black and white, of course, and you could open one door, you could move back into the room you just left. You could go back again, you can end up at a very strange location. So it's all very much of a dreamlike place. And then we had a situation where one person actually tore out his own eye and gave it to the player characters. And this, of course, carried out into the real world. So when they left this theater, they actually had this one bloody eye in their hand, and everything they had taken in what they thought were very much like a dream place were actually there. So we use this as a way of mixing dream and reality. And I guess it's part of our cult heritage, where actually dreams are just as real as what we call real. So it's easy for us to do that. And we also use one specific thing that is very nice. Usually when we write Call of Cthulhu scenarios, we have a specific table for insanities, which are specific for this scenario.
Love that.
Which means if you're going to lose your mind in a theater filled with strange things, all the insanities you get are going to be related to that scene and that scenario. So I guess in a very much all-around way, that's my answer.
I love that. I think there's some fantastic things there, Gunilla and Michael. I love that, handing the eye and then you're back in and there's the eye. You know, I'm imagining someone now with crocodile bites on their arms and holding an eye and all kind of sorts. There's a changeling in the corner of the room. I think this, you know, how you treat your players. I've got one or two other notes I've made as we've gone through this, but I've decided now to not jump in now, go to the other questions, and I hopefully will come back to it at the end if we've got time. It's just such a rich conversation. How dare you present all of these other opportunities? Would anybody else like to offer any last thoughts on manipulation, Tom?
Yeah. First off, there's a rather brilliant playthrough of the Kingsburg Minotaur by Redmond Role Playing. They're doing this story very well. I love it. And yeah, so great to have the authors here. So
good shout out. Yeah, good shout out. Fantastic Red Moon role playing. So check that out. You'll be able to see those aspects, be able to see those elements. Okay, question 4. So this actually takes us, thank you, Tom, nice lead in there, takes us to look at some famous scenarios. So from whatever scenarios, campaigns, whatever system, there are some famous scenarios and campaigns in many systems that use dreams, nightmares, and surreal tropes. Where have you seen it done, and why was it successful or not? And obviously, we know that's subjective, and we know that comes down to different GMs and things. But I think it's important that we are able to talk about unsuccessful moments, either personal moments or whether that's things that we've seen, because it's a part of the craft. It's a subjective, creative hobby that we all kind of professionally work in, so it's important to recognize those moments. Gunilla, I seem to be picking on you constantly to start.
Now we go for Travis, I say.
Oh, my mistake. Travis, apologies, you've been outed. Travis, go for it, Travis.
Okay, so I have not had the privilege to run yet, but The Wilds Beyond the Witchlight, it's a D&D 5e adventure. It takes place almost entirely in a dream, a couple of dream realms within like a pocket dimension. I don't want to say it's an all ages adventure, but because I'm usually the horror guy, I'm like, okay, I'm going to talk only about scary things. But it does a really great job of incorporating a lot of the whimsical into what a DM could easily take into something very terrible and horrifying, or keep it all ages appropriate. It goes into ridiculous there's this fish people who have like a court, and they're all trying to kill each other because it's just like they're backstabbing. It's a backstabbing group of fish people who are obsessed with titles and nobility. And then you go straight from that to like an actual encounter with a rather creepy hag who has a very particular weakness, which makes almost no sense unless you find your journal or something. And I don't want to spoil things, but like it does a really good job of incorporating the whimsy and making it feel, in a way, like we as players with the childhood stories that if we had some largely Western influenced stories like Brothers Grimm, any insights into these things, you might be able to figure out that iron could be a very useful material to have with you when you're going through areas with shapeshifters. Or it's weird because it incorporates like childhood things that even in America, when I grew up, these elements of like things that are familiar to me with a different take on them. And if you try and reason your way through the dream, you can reasonably do so with some accuracy if you have some Western folklore in you. I would say you're a little bit more confused if you're from the Eastern folklore side of things, but it does present itself very much in that way. And I think I've read most of it. I haven't gotten completely through the last chapter because I'm going to be running it shortly, but it does a really great job of incorporating and tying loose ends. So random things that happen in the beginning that used to like, what's your wish? Oh, that actually is going to be important later. So as a DM, you have to write that down on your like future chart and find out, okay, how is this going to be important later on page 256? When we've all forgotten what we wished for, these wishes were actually very significant and will affect the gameplay in a very big way. So please do write that down. And it's got this flow chart of like, if the players decided to ride the pony, write it down. Like, why? Why if it went on a pony ride? How's that important? Well, maybe when they're working with ponies later, they'll have some experience. So it does a lot of foreshadowing in a way that reading the book, and it tells me like this is going to come up later, I didn't even know was going to be important. And I'm like, okay, before session 1, you really need to read the whole thing to get a grasp of, again, if you decided to juggle axes at this or have drinks with somebody, by having drinks with them and cheering them up a little bit, they may go on to do something with their life that will affect you later in a way that like only dreams kind of can make these weird abstract connections. And I really love what they've done with it.
I can see how excited you are to run that, Travis. I like that. I love that idea. I mean, especially, I think I could see you very animatedly talking about the idea of the wish and how at the start of the campaign, they're making a wish and then that's something that tracks them throughout to pay off later on. That's a really lovely idea. That's a really a cool idea that I think, especially if it's something that the players are aware of, and then as we all do with copious notes and copious sessions, certain things fall through the gaps, don't they? Do you remember this? Things take different importance depending on what session you're doing. It's lovely to revisit things and have things pay off at a later date. And I know that as we've been talking about drip feeding, that would be a huge aspect of that. If we started with Travis, let's go in reverse. Tom, let's go to you. We'll go all the way back to Gunilla.
Wonderful. Okay. I'm not sure if it is famous, but it is awesome. Et in Arcadia Ego for Cult sets the cast of people who maybe know each other a tiny little bit. They all have connections to the center NPC, and they are isolated. And over the course of several days, dream and reality start to intermingle and become indiscernible at some point. And I think one of the strengths of this game, of this scenario, is actually that it takes time, and you have a lot of time between the dreams, and then there's room for the characters to talk. And I'd say there's not really much to do for them than basically talk. And this creates a certain tension. And as these time frames in which there is no interaction with the dream grow smaller and smaller, and the dream becomes more intrusive. There's just a slow ramp up of tension and horror, and I just really, really like it. And I have a group of players who really enjoy just role play their characters without any pressing plot trying to get them to the next hint, delete, or whatever. They just enjoy being horrible people from time to time, and this is a perfect match for them.
Yeah, I think giving those opportunities, especially if you've got a group of players who do just love role playing, it's great, isn't it? And you can just drop them the odd thing, and they will eat it up and roll with it. And yeah, that's fantastic. Jason.
Okay. Well, I wanted to start with a positive one. Unfortunately, I can't remember the name of it because it's so darn old, but it was one of the ancient Call of Cthulhu modules, which was it was on Roanoke Island. It's an old gray scenario book, but the entire thing is an archaeological dig, and it takes place over several weeks. And each night, the players suffer the nightmares that that the actual villagers from Roanoke Island did. And you were supposed to throw in more and more details and slowly guide them to uncover the actual mysteries of the island itself, because the island is kind of attacking them in their dreams. I thought that was done very well.
Okay, yeah.
Unfortunately, I find it hard to find more scenarios that really get it, because the way that I've seen most of them written is that it's almost like a dungeon quest. It's not a surreal experience. It's an info dump that basically I've played Delta Green's Impossible Spaces a couple of times now, and I don't know if it's just the GMs or just the way I haven't actually read the scenario itself, but there's a surreal moment where you're basically exploring this hotel and wandering through different areas, and it just felt more and more like a dungeon rather than a dream. It was all set, encounters, and when you have set encounters, that loses that surrealism, it loses that dream logic. But go ahead.
Sorry, Jason, I was just thinking, for the players, does that change, do you think, how they perceive, I don't want to use the word success or succeeding, so I don't want us to think about it in a kind of I'm completing the level kind of way, but is that the kind of the feeling that you're talking about here?
Yeah, that's it. It becomes more of an encounter based role playing, whereas with Limbo in Cult Divinity Lost, it gives you a lot more narrative freedom, because you play off what the players want. They give you the inspiration. They shape the dream, and you just react to it, and you just basically feed into that and give them the little nuggets. So it's a lot more cooperative, and I think that's some of the best nightmares that you can create are cooperative effects, because the players want you to torture them.
I mean,
so they give you that.
Yeah. I mean, and that's my experience is the cooperative one. I'm just wondering, is that something though that, I mean, I'm guessing it must be this idea of you can have this cooperative, even though potentially you are still at risk, etc., and you as the player are investing in your character's demise essentially by cooperating with the dream, or not, who knows? But can you do you ever see that there's that, rather than cooperative dreamlike connection, there is that competitive or adversarial? Is that more of the kind of the dungeon crawl aspect? Like, here is a dream world. You are not necessarily a part of creating it, but you found yourself in it.
Mm-hmm.
Survive.
That's exactly it. That's kind of how I found that in Impossible Spaces, is that, I'm trapped here now. I need to get out. It's not I need to wake up, or I need to learn from this experience. This is a danger. I have to get through it. So it's become a challenge rather than an experience.
survival versus that psychological investment, different type of gameplay. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, oh, brilliant. Thank you, Jason. Yeah. Michael.
Oh dear.
Good start.
But of course, there are all those classical Call of Cthulhu campaigns with parts of it being in the Dreamlands. But as you say, part of the problem with Dreamlands as such that it is a reality. It's a separate world. It's a demiplane. It's a place that actually exists. It has consistency. If you make something and create something in Dreamlands, and you invest some of your power into it, it remains when you come back the next time. So it's a bit strange finding things that in Call of Cthulhu that really are dreamy in that way, that really are surreal. I think I have to go a bit out of Tropic and use Ashtung Cthulhu and The Secrets of Atlantis Adventure by Lynn Hardy mainly. I only played the new edition. I didn't play the old edition. So this is the 2D20 system from Mophidius. But they have a really nice concept about dreams from things that haven't happened as yet. Dreams from the future, where you can actually dream something that you haven't been through as yet. And this is, of course, very usable in cult because time is an illusion. It doesn't exist. But in this scenario, I think it was Lynn who wrote this part, it's a very nice thought about people starting about having dreams about things that haven't happened as yet. So I think I used that one because it was new to me. It was a good idea. I'm probably going to use it myself in a scenario in the near future. So that's part of it. Otherwise, I mean, even in cult or scenarios, I really don't want to recommend any of our scenarios because we use Dreamlands and dreams quite a lot in them, the dream regions. So I think I go for good old Lynn's adventure.
Good old Lynn Hardy. Well, she's a good friend. A very, very big fan, Lynn. Lynn, if you're here, you're amazing. Can I ask on that, Michael? I'd love it. Love the idea. The future dreams, time is an illusion because of the nature of the future dreams. Does that, or maybe it's just one strand of it, and I'm not seeing the bigger picture. Does that take on a prophetic nature where you, as the character, you're seeing your future to then look at that idea of
you're breaking up.
Oh, apologies. Am I back? Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Fantastic. Sorry, it's quite a wonderful storm we're having here in the UK. I'm just hearing the carnage outside. Sorry, I will shorten that question. Futuristic dreams, time is an illusion. Does that set the player up to have like a interaction with prophecy, a prophetic nature? Is that the intention? Where I've had this dream of something that I might do, so when the situation presents itself, I can either do it or not, depending on is that the intention or is that too simplistic?
The intention was actually things that were supposed to happen no matter what. So I had to squeeze the story a bit to actually make it happen because our players, we have played for them for a very, very long time, for over 30 years. They are a bit suspicious. So we have to cheat a bit to make sure things happen. But it was a nice touch, so I thought I'd keep it. And with a little bit of fiddling with the rules, I actually made them happen or finding themselves in the situation they dreamt about several sessions earlier.
Well, I am a firm believer that all games need a little bit of railroading. It's kind of it's the narrative journey, isn't it? You need to give the players a little bit of a nudge here and there. But thank you, Michael. Thank you, Gunilla.
I'll have to recommend a little story in the starting box of Dragon Bane, the Swedish dragons and demons adventure game. And this little scenario is made by Pelle Nilsson, the guy who wrote Murr Borg, if you
Oh, wow. Yeah.
played that, the apocalyptic, you crawl around and it's nasty and then you die game. And for Dragonbane, which is otherwise a quite kiddie game with you fight orcs and goblins with your little sword. And
Then you die because
yeah,
it's fucking dangerous.
it's a little old school fantasy game, but Pelle is Pelle, so his scenario is a haunted inn where a murder has turned the inn into a nightmarish location where the characters are trapped and they have to find their way through the inn and find clues in discarded dolls and crazy people, and then they get out on the other side through an old churchyard. And in that setting, in the Dragonbane very sword and sorcery setting, he managed to make a very nice, creepy, and absurd little scenario setting. So if you
Fantastic.
have that little starter box, Pelle's Adventure is, I think, the best.
Amazing. Well, thank you for all these recommendations. I can assure you they've all been written down. They'll be on someone's Christmas list in the very near future. We're what time we're moving close. So we've got our last question, and then there's a extra little topic. But if any of you guests have anything that you kind of go, actually, this is something that I thought would be really interested for us to talk about, or if anybody would like to ask anybody else a question, you'd be very welcome to at the end. So the last question is, and this actually might lead into some of our final questions and thoughts anyway, what advice would you give to GMs? So this is for any system. It could be system agnostic. It could be for a specific system. It could be for a genre style. You know, we've talked about the psychology of dreams, nightmares, and the surreal. We've talked about possibly even a survival encounter with dreams, nightmares, and the surreal as well. But what advice would you give in regard to how can you make them stand out from the waking world, which I know is almost contrary to what some of our preferences have been? So let's go hog wild. Let's Gunilla, we'll start with you. We're going to force you this time. We'll go back around this way.
Yeah.
I saw Travis's wide eyes when we reversed the order earlier. So just let's give some good advice. Really, what do you think? What do you like, and what would you do?
Yeah, to make it stand out, I think it's important to make it to use the dream logic. Our world has a logic of our everyday lives, and we expect to trust cause and effect, and we expect people to stay the same, and we expect ourselves, our own minds, to stay the same. But in dreams, this logic will be abolished, and you can do it slow, piece by piece, or you can pull the rug. But I think you have to have this kind of discrepancy if you want to contrast the dreams with the waking world. And then, of course, you can break the waking world apart later on in the story, but it's a nice touch often to keep the two a bit separated at the beginning, so you feel that something is awry in the dream. And I have tools, I have means to tell story in this dream as a character, as a player, that I wouldn't have in the waking world. I can set up, I can steer the dream maybe in a way I couldn't steer the living world. That can be liberating for the players and the characters.
I love that. I love that idea of keeping them separate at first. It almost gives that player a sense of, or the character, a sense of safety as well. And then obviously as that begins to break down, that safe space begins to disappear for the character. And as the player, it's recognizing that that's happening. That's a really, I suppose, really good way to build tension and suspense through what the dreams mean as well, and whatever outcomes we'll be kind of building towards. Excellent. Thank you, Gunilla. Michael.
Oh dear, that was almost everything I was going to talk about. I'd say I work a lot with subtle changes rather early on in the story. I kind of like when things are feeling a little bit fishy and people really don't react to it. For example, people are walking down the street in Stockholm or Berlin and suddenly there's a new little street here. Oh, it must have been there all the time. I'm just mistaken. And then a bit later on, perhaps there are several new buildings. So I kind of tend to work more with the subtle or the dream or the unreal seeping into the real world, trying to make the player characters starting to doubt whatever they think are real. And this works both in Call of Cthulhu and in Cult, and of course in good old games like In Nomine from Steve Jackson Games, a French game in the beginning, I think, which was a great game. And I also listen quite a lot to the player characters. What do they like? Oh, I mean the players, of course. What do they like? How do they react to this? What part of this do they find interesting, scary, or just fucking strange? So I tend to change my plans quite a lot depending on whatever the player characters or the players do and what they react to. So my advice would be start slowly, make sure that the players like it, and listen to what the players have to say and how they react, because nothing can be as scary to them as what they themselves have in their own heads. Whatever I make
Absolutely.
up can never be as scary as that. So
Yeah.
I would say that.
100%, Joe. That's something that when teaching conventions of horror to students is one of the key things that we talk about is your own imagination and how that's going to be the best weapon that you have to impact your audience. Michael, just on that, I really love that example of there's a street there that you didn't see before. Would you, just as a tool for our GMs out there, would you offer it like that? In the scenario, would you say as you're walking down the street, there's a street there that you didn't recognize before, or is it as you walk down there, you see 2 streets on your left, and then the next time you go, you see 3 streets on your left? How do you kind of present that to the players?
Tend to make sure when they pass through this part of, for example, Kreuzberg in Berlin, they suddenly realized this is a small alley here with some shops and it's probably just been reopened or something, but I do mention it. I do tend to give them something to see if they hook into it.
Yeah,
if they're
not subtle enough to be ignored. Yeah.
If they're totally uninterested, I tend to go a bit bigger next time.
The town criers outside with a bell.
Yeah, another very nice thing is always to take away something.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, wasn't there a church here? But dear my God, can't we really remember? I can't remember a big church here.
Yeah, that's lovely. Just creating that, as you said, that I imagine, the player and therefore the character, to a degree, there's going to be a lot of processing there on questioning things. No wonder your players are so suspicious of you, Michael. This is you've created your own trap there, I feel.
I'm such a nice guy.
Jason.
For me, it's you need to, when you're going to introduce dreams, nightmares, or the surreal, you need to understand what you're actually trying to convey, because these are the realms of metaphor and symbolism. So you can't just do crazy stuff. It has to mean something, usually to the player or an NPC. When I'm introducing dreams, I try to figure out who is actually dreaming, be it one of the player characters, an NPC, or in some cases, as I've done, is the actual setting, because the setting itself is alive and it will be dreaming, and the players just get swept up in it. So you can start small and just kind of slowly part the curtains to reveal increasingly bizarre and unsettling things. You've also got to remember dream logic. For example, you can do a hint for the players. Suddenly they can't read, because in dreams most people cannot read. So if you actually pick up a book, it would just be gibberish.
I could add one short thing there. In our cult novels, we are actually using the dreams of Berlin, the city itself, the city dreams.
Oh, wow. So huge environmental
Yeah.
collection of memories, dreams. Wow. Okay. I love that, Jason. I think your tagline there is something, for GMs looking to go into dreams here, or this should become the tagline, Jason, of this particular slot, this panel. It's the realism of metaphor and symbolism. That is how you communicate meaning, or it's got to have meaning. But that's a lovely way to think about it. If you're GMing and you're looking at this dream, nightmare, surreal aspect, that idea of metaphor and symbolism, it's inherent, I think, within the psychology of dreams as to how we perceive what their meaning is. So being able to take that meaning, give your players meaning, and not do it in a very obvious or direct manner, which is kind of, I think, what we hope for in dreams, to give the players and the characters that level of shrouded interaction. That's a really lovely way to explain that.
I kind of got inspiration from an old 80s movie, Dreamscape. Most of the movie is absolute
Dreamscape.
garbage. But the dream sequences are actually quite clever. For example, when when they go into a child's dream, his nightmare, the house, the angles are all wrong. And it's a very simplistic house. It's just like the windows, no curtains. The furniture is just very minimalistic. And even when they try to escape the monster that's in the house, rather than having some huge dreamscape, it's just a rickety old wooden staircase going down. And that's a lot more terrifying when you explain that as a GM, you can just do the minimalism, and then the players will fill in the rest.
Yeah. Nice. Tom.
Yeah, that's something I also want to go into for a second. I think everything that is in a dream should have meaning, and therefore you can just say you are at a royal ball, you are in a living room, and then mention the things that are actually important, significant, and relevant. Unlike I tend to do with places in the waking world, where I give a broad description of everything that's there to create the mood. But in this case, it's more like, we narrow it down to the things that matter. And if I introduce an element like a smell into a scene, and I think about what do I want to do with it. Like character introduce the smell of the favorite food of a character. What do I want to do with this? Do I want to tell them this is a safe place, or do I want to tell them this is actually not a safe place by changing the smell or making the character identifying it as repellent or anything like this? And there was a second thing. I also like to get the players imagining stuff, and therefore I am getting them kinda into a trance by, for example, I want to introduce a character's worst nightmare into a dream. I'm gonna tell them now there is a door, and I go into details about this door and speaking the description with unsettling words. And then I ask, what do you not want to be behind this door? The answer might be very surprising, because maybe they don't want to be their favorite person to be behind this door, because that would be such a betrayal and trust, such a breaking point for them, that maybe the horrible raven they've been afraid of all the time isn't actually as horrible at that person not being who they appear to be. And it's throwing maybe a little bit of wrench into your own planning, but maybe don't plan too much.
No, I think that can be really good advice, and I think everybody probably here would agree with the fact that when you're working with your players, you've got to have that give and take, and as much as you give, you've got to take, and that's going to help form that shared narrative as well. That's lovely. I like that. I don't think I've done that yet, Tom, so I might steal that one at some point and just say, what don't you want to be in the box or behind the door? And I know you mentioned there as well some sensory aspects, kind of like smells of food and stuff like that. I think sensory, environmental aspects, and I know there's other panels on these things as well over the weekend. But they're also really lovely tools to use within those dreamscapes to either put your player at ease or on edge, depending on what it is that they smell and how those smells, sights, sounds, things can change. Travis.
Everything that has been said is quite valid about how to make dreams distinct. I can't really add more in that regard, so I'm going to go the opposite direction and just say that you don't have to make them distinct. You can have them bleed in. And again, like people are saying, so I use numbers a lot. When I'm sitting at a table or on a Zoom with 5 people, and they're saying I'm one of the 5 people, but I'm also the GM. I'm like, okay, you're at the bar, you guys order drinks. You guys order 5 drinks. Well, there's only 4 players. Nice. So you can do things that have much deeper meaning and it incorporates into the dreams, or maybe they order too few. But sometimes it's fun to incorporate elements of their fears of people being present or not present, or maybe there was another person with them the whole time who we've forgotten. Going back to Michael's brilliant idea of the man who can't be remembered. He was with them the whole time. They just couldn't figure it out because the players were given the information. They go back and listen to a recording of what we did. There were definitely 5 drinks served. And there were references to other elements that would indicate them being present, the smell of smoke or something. But being able to use that in a way that just gets completely forgotten in the most mundane of descriptions. And as you're going through, that's really all I can contribute beyond. They don't always have to be separate. They can blend and bleed.
Of your players, Travis, when you say something like, okay, you've just ordered 5 beers, do occasionally they go, wait a minute, there's 4 of us? Do they ever kind of catch you out? Or is it a bit like, is this the kind of, it rolls on a bit and then they go, hang on a minute?
It's not, I have a whole season right now where they don't realize that one of the characters in the show isn't a character and they're dead. And they've never been on the show. Like the listeners who've had the recordings to listen to multiple times haven't realized this. It's
fantastic. and those things, they are so rewarding when you get to them later on. When there's revelations fall upon the players, they're really, really lovely, really, really rewarding. We've got a few minutes. I will just bend your ear on one last thing that's popped up in my mind. It's because I think I've seen or heard rather podcasting. I've heard it done really well, but I don't think I've ever really done it and thought about, I want to do this. And I wanted to just feel what people's opinions are, really. So it could be quite divisive, could be subjective. Apologies. Player isolation. So if I've got Gunilla about to have a dream and then I go, right, can everybody else take their headphones off, or can you step out of the room? I know it's been done. It's been done really famously. I think when for Call of Cthulhu, Mike Mason and Paul Fricker, when they ran the Gatsby thing back in the day, there's a huge crossover of players, and they would, I think I've heard this story before, where they were obviously all with consent, blindfolding people and walking them off, and it became a theatrical experience within itself. Like, I know they know something I don't know, and how did that play out? So does anybody have any kind of like great story? I can see Travis is like bubbling here, so we'll start with Travis. But any kind of thoughts on that, Travis?
It's a lot of fun. I co-DM almost exclusively with like my wife / partner Caitlin. So we'll like, the party wants to split off, or like one person's asleep. All right, I'll take them. And then like she has the rest of the people, she's entertaining me in a completely different way, or the party splits up, we split the party. They have a completely different experience. Then they come back together and share the information, or don't, or share parts of information. Like, oh yeah, nothing happened. It was cool. I like to encourage these dynamics with player buy-in because it adds to the experience of them parting to puzzle out what they're not experiencing at the table. Like I mentioned again, D&D in a castle, like there's a type of player out there who really enjoys investing themselves in the puzzle within the puzzle of like, okay, what is my character experiencing? And then what did I miss, and what did I really miss? And that can be a lot of fun.
That's lovely to hear, and I'd love that idea of the code DMing and having that experience, which I'm guessing is what Mike and Paul did back in the day. And I think actually that Gatsby one needs multiple keepers for it to work as well. But that's really interesting. Anybody else? Any other thoughts on that idea of, well, I'm going to share the information with Gunilla, but not Tom?
I think that if you, as we most often do, sit around the table, it is practically a bit difficult oftentimes. People sometimes like to SMS or send notes, but for me, that sort of interrupts the flow. And the flow, especially in a horror game, is very, very important. So for me, it's more important to get the right vibe, to get the right flow, and have everybody tell the story together. And I mean, I don't have to play out what I know. We tell a story together, and we need to get the right pacing to it. That's more important for me.
For me, I think it's even more important to keep the players at the table, because if they are part of the entire story, if they know all the small secrets or dirty secrets that's been told to all the player characters, they can use them. They can't use them consciously, but they can help the story by being part of it, by knowing everything. Of course, they don't. We played with several different groups, and we always keep everybody at the table, and everybody gets to hear everything. But you never are allowed to play as you knew it. And this makes it difficult, more challenging, but also more fun to actually start, as Gunilla said, creating the story together, because you can both pull with it or pull against it, or play with it or play against it, but you're still a part of the story, and everybody makes up the story together. So for me, it's very important that everybody is at the table all the time and hears everything. So I never ever use secret parts of it. Everybody gets to know everything.
Excellent. Tom?
I think often you would otherwise just have the surprise. And if you know that things are coming up, they are being upplayed. It's, if we are watching a horror movie, it's not like somebody is leaving the room for a scene. I mean, we are watching it together, and that's because it is important to have the flow. And I think it works if you have a second GM and flow continues and stuff like this goes on. But I also have everyone partaking in the things that are coming up, because they might have a subjective idea, a theory of what's going on. And if the second omen comes for a reveal or something horrible to happen, maybe one of my friends is turning into something horrible. It's more fun to look forward to that happening instead of just guessing. If it maybe not. But that's my personal preference. Yeah, it's not.
Yeah,
Could I add something very quickly here, perhaps? We just played Aliens, the role-playing game by Free League, in a scenario that's part of the source book, starter box. And there's a situation where, big spoiler, one of the player characters gets contaminated. He's going to turn into a monster. And this is kept secret from all the players except the one who has been contaminated. And I think that's a mistake. It makes the story less interesting for the other players, because if they all know that, all right, Michael's character is going to turn into a dangerous monster real soon now, they can joke about it, they can realize that small things are wrong, they will still not react as they knew, but they can put themselves into real dangerous situations by saying, I think me and my character, let's go down this corridor
go down
alone and see if we can find this goddamn monster before it kills us all. And it makes a better story. So I would
Michael, hold all the guns while I go down this corridor.
Yeah, precisely. I would have played it like that. I would have preferred having it that way. Of course, it's a nice big surprise for everybody, but still, the game would have been better. The story would have been better if everybody knew.
Yeah. Jason, any thoughts?
Pretty much mirroring the same. I used to occasionally, more in like the vampire, politically intrigued things where some of the players could use that knowledge. But now the groups that I play with are they want to be involved in the story, even if they're just listening to it.
Yeah.
And to add to it, one of the tricks I've actually done, you can only do it once or twice, maybe, is for Dreams and Surreal. You pick one of the players or one of the characters. They are having the dream. You frame the story from that dream, but you're involving everybody. Yeah. The rest of the players don't know it. So when you finally do the reveal, oh, so and so wakes up. The rest of you, that didn't happen.
That's nice. Yeah.
Yeah,
like everybody say, you've got that inclusion, everybody's involved, but the information, you can't metagame that you know this because it was their dream. Yeah, perfect. Oh, well, I think I'd love it. Thank you for all that advice. So I am incredibly jealous that Travis and his partner are able to kind of go, I'll DM this bit, you DM that bit. I think that's fantastic, Travis. A really lovely way of looking at that. But I totally understand and appreciate everybody's idea on, as soon as somebody's out and they're not in the narrative or in any way, shape or form, it's very jarring, especially dreams, nightmares, the surreal horror, the narratives that we often look at ourselves. It can be a very, it's very epic theater, isn't it? You're breaking the fourth wall. You're stopping the action. You're alienating the audience, which is the opposite of what you want to do. You want them emotionally invested. So it's a very delicate thing to maintain. So we don't want to be breaking our characters out there. Travis.
If I could add just one more thing.
Yeah.
It's not for everyone, certainly, I will agree. But a lot of my games have been through Zoom. And we're like, oh, everybody take a 15-minute break, except you. That's been the easiest way to kind of sneak those things in. And then they accept you as a 5-minute person, and they get a 10-minute break, and then they can come back. So there's ways to do it where it doesn't like break the flow, even if you're just a single DM. But also, it is not for every table. I know groups that would never fly with. So it comes back into buy-in and what people enjoy and the kind of player you're playing with.
And with Zoom, you've also got private chats that you can just basically send little bits and pieces to a person.
Exactly.
So you are perceiving it while this is going on. You can send, your little Zoom. That's not what you are seeing.
Yeah.
You're seeing this. Act accordingly.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you all so much for your time. You've been absolutely amazing, very generous with your thoughts, your knowledge. We really appreciate it. If you're here for the rest of the Illusion HorrorCon, make sure to check out the rest of the slots. There's some amazing panels coming up. Probably none as amazing as this, but there are some other amazing panels coming up. Could I ask everybody just one more time, and we'll Gunilla, Michael, Jason, Tom, Travis, just tell everybody who you are, where we can find you, please. Gunilla.
You can find me at Blue Sky as Gunilla Jonsson, Blue Sky. And Mike and I has a page on Facebook called Gunilla Jonsson and Michael Petersén. So you can find us there as well.
Excellent.
And I'm only at Facebook, so you can always find me at Facebook. And if someone wants to contact me and you don't want to use Facebook, you can always go by Helmgast or Eloso. Or Free League. They do know where I live, and they have all the information that I really don't want to share about me.
They can find you.
Yeah, they can find me.
Excellent. Jason.
I'm Jason Fryer. You can find me on Blue Sky or X. I'm not on there as much, but both. I'm Otter Poet, so OTTERPOET. And just feel free to write me or engage me, because I absolutely love exchanging ideas with wonderful people like you. So
amazing. Thank you, Jason. Tom.
Yeah, I'm Tom Moore. You can find me at Blue Sky with the very same name. Unlike with the Hellbird app, I don't have to add any numbers to my name. That's very awesome. You can also find me on startplaying.games as Tom Murr, and I'm on all kinds of Discords, like the one for this convention, or the Onyx Path Discord, or the Free League stuff. And yeah, I'm around.
Amazing. Travis.
You can find me anything at Dark Dice Pod, all the platforms, or VENTRAVIS is the other one. Like my last name makes the first.
And I'm TA Newman. You can find me mainly at the Miskatonic Playhouse, but I tend to be dabbling everywhere these days, which is quite exciting. And you can pretty much find me there. Find me anywhere. Find me here on the Illusion HorrorCon Discord. This is where you can find me. Thank you all very much for listening, guys. We will say goodbye. Thank you very much.
Goodbye.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye.